Welcome to Stay Home, Stay Focused. I'm Jack Moline. I'm the president of Interfaith Alliance, and my special guest today is Reverend Elder Pat Bumgardner, who is the senior elder pastor of Metropolitan Community Church in New York City. And Pat, thank you so much for being here with me today for this conversation.
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
The first thing I like to ask my guests before we start on anything else is how they're doing. So, how are you?
Well, all things considered, I think I'm doing pretty good. My wife and I remain healthy. And in terms of the church, we're able to keep a lot of our essential services going and able to um, video, produce video packages for the Sunday services. And in terms of the congregation, all things considered, some people have been ill, but everyone is recovering. So I consider us pretty fortunate that way.
And you're in New York proper. You're in the borough of Manhattan.
Correct.
So that's sort of the epicenter of where everything is happening. How has
Yes.
life been different for you, other than what we see on television, which is obviously empty streets and lots of responders?
Well, I think in terms of the church, we've seen the need for food. We run a major food program here, but we've seen that need quadruple just like overnight. It
Wow.
just expanded. And on top of that, we've had to start doing things like home deliveries. So as of the end of last week, we had done 1,000 deliveries to individual homes, which is not something we were at all prepared to do or had ever done. So um, it's been it's been a challenge to keep up with that, but at the same time, a lot of people have stepped forward to help us, and a lot of donations have poured in to make it possible to meet this need. So I feel, in the midst of this crisis, I feel like what we need has come our way in order to respond.
That's a that's a good piece of news in bad circumstances. I think a lot of people who are viewing this or listening to what we're talking about do not know about Metropolitan Community Church. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, Metropolitan Community Churches was founded 50 years ago, actually, by the Reverend Troy Perry, who at the time was a Pentecostal preacher who had been excommunicated when it was discovered that he was gay. So, for a while, he kind of wandered around, not exactly sure what to do. Um, but eventually, he took an ad out in a paper in Los Angeles and held the first service in his living room with himself and 12 other people of what would become Metropolitan Community Church, the largest, interestingly enough, the largest LGBTQI organization of any kind in the world. So we have churches around the globe, and we focus largely in the queer community, but it is a church that's open to all. So we have a number of allies with us also, and our focus is community for all, salvation for all, and uh, and God's love for all people. So social justice for all. So we not only offer church for people who might otherwise be marginalized, but we have a very heavy focus on the social justice end of things in terms of the gospel.
You were very involved in social justice causes parallel to your advancement within the leadership of MCC New York. How did you come to MCC initially?
Well, I had been in a Roman Catholic seminary. I was Catholic in Chicago. And of course, when I completed that, I got in because they said there's nothing to prohibit the education of women. We just can't do anything with you once you're educated. So when I finished my education, I moved to New York and was working in a group home for court-referred teenage boys when I met somebody who was part of MCC, and she said, come to MCC, it's for everyone. So I came and I decided that I had been right about my calling to the priesthood, but wrong about the venue. And so MCC decided to honor my education and my calling and receive me as a transfer clergy person. So I was subsequently ordained in MCC. And then, as I said, MCC from the beginning had a heavy focus on social justice, and that was kind of my originating understanding of the gospel. I think one of the things I can say positively about Roman Catholicism is it has a very strong footing in terms of understanding the gospel as a social justice manifesto.
So I've spent time in the four corners of the United States, and I actually grew up in Chicago, and I can tell you that Catholic social services and other kinds of activities connected with the Catholic Church are a role model for people who are concerned about reaching out to the poor and the homeless and people who are without privilege in this society. I think sometimes with all of the conversations that go on about certain doctrinal matters, people overlook the fact that service really is so much a part of being a Roman Catholic, and that you were able to bring that theology and that practice with you to MCC, I think is a blessed and great use of your talents that benefits not only you in fulfilling your calling, but the people you serve. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk about that a little bit. And I want to talk about the inclusivity of MCC. I know it is the norm there that everyone is welcome. And I want to ask you a question I'm not sure is even possible to ask. Are there limits to inclusivity?
Well, I think that's a great question. What I always say is everyone welcome doesn't mean anything goes. So, for example, and this is a difficult topic, I've had people approach me who have, one guy in particular was convicted of child molestation. My answer to him was, you cannot be in this building and not be triggered because there are children here. So I'm happy to minister to you. I'll bring you communion wherever you're at. I'll visit you. I'll counsel you. You can watch our services online, but you cannot be in the community on Sundays because that's a trigger for you. It's not safe for you. It's not safe for the children here. So including that person meant not judging him in the sense of that's God's realm, not mine, and not cutting him off from sacramental care. Also, though, not allowing him to be in a situation that's harmful to him and harmful to others.
It's a great way to explain it. Now, I want to take that just a little tick farther, and that is to say that the message of religion, any religion, is tribal in its nature, so that it commends, any religion will commend a particular way of believing, a particular way of practice, and various standards of behavior that are sanctioned or not. How does the tribalism of religion interact with the inclusivity of a place like MCC?
Well, we are what I would describe as an interfaith community. So people come here from many different backgrounds and also from unchurched backgrounds. So what we like to say is we're a spiritual home for the LGBTQI community and allies. And you come believing as you believe. And my job as the pastor is to accompany you on your spiritual journey, not to mandate what that journey is or the contents of that journey, but to try to help you figure it out and develop as best you can in terms of what you're discovering or finding out. I'm very clear who I am, but I do that as a way of making it safe for you to be very clear about who you are.
You are a wonderful and talented pastor and guide, Pat, I have to tell you. We have our scientists in this country working on the physical aspects of the coronavirus. And they're working on ways to track who has it and ways to treat who suffers from it and ways to prevent other people from getting it. But coronavirus isn't only something physical. There's a social element to a pandemic as well that our physical scientists are not able to address. It seems to me that the LGBTQI community in our country is an enormous resource dealing with the tragic and triumphant experience of a pandemic. Are there insights that having been and to my chagrin somewhat alone in suffering through the early days and even the middle days of the AIDS pandemic, is there something that the LGBTQI plus community brings to us in America today?
I think there is. You know, what I like to say to my congregation is this is not my first pandemic, not our first pandemic. And so we've been through this before. And what we learned from AIDS, for example, is that it's very, very important not to cut anybody off in the midst of this and to continue doing the things that we know we can do. So, for example, you know, in the early days of AIDS, when doctors would not see people with AIDS in their offices for fear of contagion, wouldn't touch them, wouldn't care for them, we saw those people in our church office and we didn't know what to do exactly. But I'm telling you this for a reason. So I had this yellow dish pan bin that I used to fill with water and put on gloves and bathe people's legs who had Kaposi's sarcoma, just to soothe them. I used to look in their mouths and tell them, yes, you have thrush, you know, gargle with this, whatever. Not that it cured them, just so somebody was caring about them. And I think that's a really important lesson, that we can do whatever we can do, not to cure people, but to care for them and to make them feel human. And like their life matters and what happens to them matters. So the thing I mentioned before about taking groceries to people, is it everything that they need? No. But showing up on somebody's doorstep with our gloves and our mask on and providing groceries and asking them how they're doing keeps them alive for a few days, but it also makes them feel cared about and like they're part of this human family. And I think one of the biggest tragedies of COVID-19 is the message that some lives are more expendable than others. So, you know, we have homeless people. The message is shelter in place and wash your hands. Well, how does a homeless person shelter in place and wash their hands? So it's really, really important that when a homeless person shows up here, they are brought into the space, they get to pick up their bag of groceries, they get to be asked how they're doing, they get a mask, they get gloves, they get hand sanitizer, they get the things that everybody else is getting the message they need, and that is communicating to them that somebody believes it's worth saving their lives.
It's an extraordinarily important point to make. It's straight from Isaiah, you know, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, take the homeless into your home. And here is MCC doing exactly that. MCC is one institution in a very large city, and and the network of MCC churches is only one in a very large country. What should we as a society be doing during a time of quarantine, sequester, shelter in place for all of those people who do not have a place to call home?
Well, I think a number of things. One, I think when we are out doing something essential like getting groceries or something, we should take the time to talk to people on the street because they're all over the place and just let them know, ask them how they're doing. That's what I do. How are you doing today? How are you feeling today? If I have a couple bucks in my pocket, I give it to them. One woman asked me for a pair of tennis shoes, so I'm looking for shoes for her now, because I know I'm going to see her on a regular basis. Just do what you can. And even if you have nothing to give, just that 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 15 seconds of saying, how you doing? I'll see you tomorrow, or whatever it is, really helps. Another really important thing to do is I try to pack up every day whatever food I have left over from that day in my home and put it on the corner where I live because I know there's a guy there that's going to come by and get it. And he asked me the other day, are you the person that puts that food there? And I said, yes. So now he feels safer taking it because he knows it comes from me. And I think a third thing is, there are churches and synagogues and mosques and temples and religious institutions all over this country. I just saw a story about a church in Detroit who are trying to help people in their neighborhoods who don't have what they need. Check out who's in your neighborhood, and if you have extra food, if you have dry goods, if you have $5 that you can give, it really, whatever it is, connect with them and help them do this job that they're doing. And I guess the fourth thing I would say is every night at 7 o'clock, I applaud all the essential workers. That's a thing in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And they have different times around the country and around the globe. But I mean, just take a moment to fill the universe with gratitude for all the people that are, in some sense, giving all they can give to make sure our lives continue.
And this is all important advice and information for the other side of this pandemic as well. The problem of homelessness and of people who are disenfranchised from what we call normative society is not going to disappear with the coronavirus. So to be able to get into this practice, being moved by whatever compassion comes out of the pandemic, can benefit us as a society when we're finished, God willing, with this as well. Pat, the time I've been talking to you has just flown by. I would love to sit here and talk for another 20 minutes about all sorts of other things, but our time is just about up. I like to ask at the end of these conversations what my guest would recommend to people who are indeed inside their homes that will inspire them and engage them beyond their concerns about hygiene and protecting their loved ones. What advice do you give people?
Well, I try to talk to people about, again, about gratitude for this day and the gift of life we have and what kind of, what kind of energy, regardless of your spiritual discipline, what kind of energy and attitude you can put out there that just fills the universe with something a little bit hopeful, a little bit generous, a little bit caring, a little bit compassionate. And I try to encourage people, if they are people of prayer, to pray for those beyond their immediate circle, but to pray for our world and our globe, that this virus can be cast from us, from all of us, and that we can be set free from it. The other thing I say to people is, a little prayer that I think we can say regardless of who we are or what we believe, but I just wrap myself and the world around me in the light and love and life of the presence of the divine. And, that's something that can take care of all of us.
Amen. Pat, if people want to know more about MCC, what can they visit on their computer?
They can go to www.mccny.org and you can learn more about us, and you can also find ways to contact us.
Wonderful. Thank you. Reverend Elder Pat Bumgardner, thank you for being with us today. And to those of you who are watching us and listening to us from your screen, stay home and stay focused.
Thank you. God